afternoon, everyone. My name is Allie Hendrickson, and today we are going to talk about the reason why the Chicago Cubs haven't been to the World Series in over 105 years. Now, many baseball teams haven't been to the World Series in a long time, but the Chicago Cubs have the longest active World Series appearance drought. They last won the World Series in 1908. The last time the Chicago Cubs went to the World Series, a house cost $5,500. A gallon of gas only cost 20 cents, and World War I hadn't even taken place yet. Baseball fans attribute these droughts to three curses that have been put on the Chicago Cubs: the curse of the Billy Goat, the Black Cat curse, and the Steve Bartman curse. And today we're going to dig deeper into these three curses. The first curse we're going to discuss is the curse of the Billy Goat, which took place in 1945. The Chicago Cubs were in the World Series and were playing Game 4 against the Detroit Tigers at Wrigley Field. A huge Chicago Cubs fan by the name of Bill Sionis brought himself and his Billy Goat to the World Series game. A bunch of people were complaining because of the goat's odor, and so he and the goat were both kicked out of the game. As he was leaving, a disgusted Sionis left and was heard saying, "The Cubs ain't gonna win no more." The Chicago Cubs ended up losing that game and ended up losing the entire World Series. A couple days later, Bill Sionis sent a message to P.K. Wrigley, the owner of Wrigley Field, and the letter said, "Who stinks now, P.K. Wrigley?" The animals that you see here behind me are sheep. Sheep are not goats, however they do look alike, and I'm pretty sure that in the animal kingdom, sheep and goats are best buds. I'm going to interview one of these sheep and see if they can shed any light on the curse of the Billy Goat. Hey little sheep, bah, bah, come here. I have some questions for you. I just need a really quick interview. Come here, come here. Unfortunately, the sheep declined an interview with me. The second curse I'm going to talk about is the curse of the Black Cat, which occurred in 1969. Now this year, the Chicago Cubs were actually doing really good, and they had a stellar roster filled with a lot of well-known players like Ron Santo. It looked like the Chicago Cubs were actually going to go to the World Series this year, but something bad occurred. Ron Santo was just about to go up to bat when a black cat ran out onto the field and ran circles around Ron Santo and then ditched into a bleacher. And the Chicago Cubs ended up losing that game, then ended up losing numerous games after that and weren't able to go to the World Series. Do they know anything about the Chicago Cubs and the curse? Is it real? Look at the camera! Look at the camera! The third curse is the Steve Bartman curse, which occurred in 2003. I remember it personally. The Chicago Cubs were in a playoff game against the Florida Marlins, and the Cubs were only 5 outs away from going to the World Series. But of course, something bad had to happen. A foul ball was hit almost into the stands, and a huge Chicago Cubs fan by the name of Steve Bartman leaned over the railing and caught the ball. Because of that, a bunch of players were really upset, and so were the fans. People ended up booing, and that just really brought down morale for the Chicago Cubs. The Cubs ended up giving away 8 runs to the Marlins that night, making it so the Marlins won that game. They ended up playing 2 more games against the Marlins, and the Cubs lost. Therefore, the Marlins went to the World Series. Attempts to break these curses have been made by huge, dedicated Chicago Cubs fans. A couple years after the Steve Bartman curse, a really rich Chicago Cubs fan bought the ball that Steve Bartman had caught for over $110,000. A large event was held outside of Wrigley Field, where thousands of people gathered outside, and they actually blew up the Steve Bartman ball in hopes that that would reverse the curse. I would like to leave you with this. Are Chicago Cubs fans just crazy people who revert to curses in order to make up excuses for why the Cubs are so bad? Or are these 3 curses real, and is that what's hindering the Chicago Cubs from going to the World Series? I'll let you be the judge of that.